Good afternoon. My name is Olachi, and we're here today with the launch of One to One with Kolade Akin. This is a series where Kolade will be interviewing various guests, finding out about their past, their interests, and various other topics. But seeing as this is the maiden edition, the first edition of this series, we thought it'd be appropriate to interview the man himself. So we're joined today with Kolade Akin, and we'll be asking him a series of questions about his interests, his personal life, his past as well. All right. So how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you very much, Olachi. It's nice having you interview me. It's a bit strange, but
Mm,
yeah, that's good.
great. Okay, so we'll get right into it. So for anyone who doesn't know who you are, for anyone who this might be the first time they're seeing you, if you could summarize, who are you? So who is Kolade Akin?
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. When you talk about Kolade Aki is a young man. I call myself a young man from a small town. Let me not call it a small town so they don't I don't get into trouble. It's a town called Imorekiti in Nigeria. That's where I hail from. But I can call myself a young man that found mercy. God, showed me mercy, and I'm just someone that loves God, that loves to do the will of God, to do what will make God happy. That's just how I can sum myself up. So everything that I do, everything that I can lay my hands on is to ensure that I make God proud, is to make sure I touch lives in a way that the people I encounter will come to know Jesus. That's the ultimate. That's the ultimate goal that I have. So when you talk about Koladiaki, is the fact that I'm passionate about the kingdom of God. Yeah.
Right, wonderful. Um, and so you mentioned being from a small town. Tell us a bit about your childhood. Tell us a bit about that.
Okay. Yeah. I will talk about my childhood was I was born on the 6th of December 1967. That's in London. I was given birth to here in the United Kingdom. And so the initial part of my growing up was here in the UK. And we lived in Islington. That's where we grew up. My 101 Mildmay Groove. That's where I grew up in London. And we spent roughly about 3.5 years. I think my dad finished his course, and he wanted to go back to Nigeria. I think one of the key things was that he experienced some of the things that were not palatable in terms of maybe racism, and he just did not want to stay here. He didn't want us to grow up here. So the first 3 years, I got to grow up here in the UK, and then we moved back to Nigeria in 1971. We moved to Ibadan. So I grew up in Ibadan. My primary school, I went to Sacred Heart Private School, Onireke Ibadan. That's where I did my primary school from 71 um, all the way to 1978. And so, yeah, I was there. And then I went to secondary school in Ado Ekiti. I went to Christ School Ado Ekiti, where I was for 5 years. So, in between those periods, um, my family moved from Ibadan, which is in Oyo State, over to Ondo State. So we shifted from Ibadan, and so my primary education was in Ibadan. My secondary education was in Ado Ekiti, but we were living in Akure, so I was in Ondo State. So primary education Oyo State, secondary education was in Ondo State. So, and that's where I was until I went to the university. So, my universities, I went to two universities, which is a story I'll talk about later. But yeah, I did my university. My final university was in um, Akure, Federal University of Technology, Akure. So, and that's it. But my childhood was one that was full of fun. I want to thank God for my parents, Paola Dipo Akin, who is of late, and my mom, Madam Ariola Ake. I could not have asked for a better set of parents, loving, caring, and full of wisdom. And I really enjoyed my childhood. even when we had challenges, one thing that I learned was that it was always a place where you just had to laugh. And I grew up in a place where no matter the amount of challenges, my parents would still be joking with each other, they would be laughing. And so we picked up on that. And you could see that even in the midst of not having, they were still giving. So, and that was the kind of childhood I had. And it was an exciting one. Yeah.
Right, wonderful. You've already spoken to us a little bit about your kind of educational background, the schools that you've gone to. But if you could give us a little bit more insight into that, and also kind of how your career came out of that educational journey as well.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, when I talk about my education, my primary and secondary educations were okay. I didn't have any major problems. I went to a private school. At that point, it was what people call a private school, was a place where the children of the elite or the children of those who were people who were well to do to a point. My dad was not that wealthy, but he was well. He was okay in terms of he had the concept that if he wanted to buy a car, he didn't need to get a loan to get a car. So that's how it was. So he had opportunities, he could do things, and then he would go out and just get he would buy his car. He said what he wanted was to be able to pay for his car cash, and that was what. So in those days, to buy a car cash, even though there were car loans, he didn't want to collect any car loan. So we're not really I would not say we were wealthy in that sense, but we were okay. So that was my primary school. Secondary school things were okay. My dad was, but I think toward the end of my secondary school, then we began to have some challenges because my dad got retrenched. So that affected a bit. But my secondary school was good. I enjoyed where I went. I went to Christ School at Ekiti, which was also a very good school in terms of the delivery of education and in terms of the life lessons you learn. You meet up with people. My school used to have people from all over the world. People, they used to do the exams to come into my secondary school in the UK. Here they would do it in the US. So you had people coming from US to come and attend my school. So that was how it was. So you come in there, you see people who have done their primary education in the UK and they're coming for secondary school in Ado Ekiti, and then you have people who are coming from. We had an Indian. One of my classmates is an Indian guy. To today, when we talk, people it's almost like, how did you get this guy? But his dad was a teacher and he was a student, so we all grew up together like that. So you had various kinds of people. People were one of my friends is a Sierra Leonean. So he came from Sierra Leone, did the exam in Sierra Leone, and came into my school to come and become a student. So you had those kind of things. So you had friends from different parts of the world and also from different parts of the country. So my secondary school was very good. And then my university education, I went to my first university was University of Ilorin, where I spent roughly some few years. I spent 3 years, but I can say 3 years basically. And I didn't finish there because of some challenges. It started with an educational challenge and then ended up with an administrative challenge where I took a year out to go and sort some things out, raise some money. We had financial challenges. So I said, let me go and raise some money. And then my head of department did not submit the letter to the um, faculty to show that I had applied for a year's leave of absence. So when I came back the next year, the university had de-enrolled me. They said they thought I had voluntarily withdrawn from the university. So that meant when my mates were going to their final year, I was going back home with nothing. So I didn't have a degree. I didn't even have. The only thing I took away was the transcript, which eventually I binned because I felt there was no point. I didn't even want to have anything to do with that university anymore because 4 years was wasted. So I had to, even though they told me I could use my transcript to get into direct entry to get into the second year in another university, I just did not want to have that record on mine. So I had to go back and do the exams to get into university. And that led me to the Federal University of Technology, Akure, where I eventually studied industrial mathematics. Now, mathematics was not my first choice. I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to do agric engineering. Found myself in mathematics in Ilorin. Left Ilorin as a mathematics student who did not finish, and then went into FUTA, Federal University of Technology, Akure, to now go and study industrial maths, which was not a choice. I didn't like maths in school. So eventually I found myself doing a 5-year degree studying mathematics. And that became something that will eventually become a career for me. And I didn't plan that, but I went to study industrial maths and I discovered that I enjoyed it. And I graduated against all odds. And the funny part of that graduation was that the same head of department that denied that he never knew me, that refused to accept that he made a mistake, was the one that became my external examiner that signed me off for my degree when I now went to this new university. So it was like he came to right it wrong. He didn't know. It was after he had signed me off that I wrote him a letter that you signed me off for this degree. I don't know how he would have felt that day, but the fact was that he did that, and that was my university education there. And coming into the UK, I've done two postgraduate degrees, one in two of them in education, one in secondary maths, the other one in professional and educational studies. So that's my journey. Even though I've done some other courses, I've done courses in IT and all the other stuff, but that's how I eventually found myself in the career that I am in at the moment. Yeah.
Mm, wonderful. And so you told us that you studied industrial maths, but at the very beginning, you also told us that you have a passion for God. You have a passion for people coming to know God. The two on the surface appear to be at odds with each other. So, how are you a minister of the gospel as somebody who studied industrial maths?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, that's you see, one of the things that I've come to understand with life is that every step of our journey, as long as we align with God, He will cause all those things to work together for our good. I didn't plan to be in the Federal University of Technology. Actually, when I had the challenge I had in Ilorin in my second year, one of our professors offered me to go to the Federal University of let me just say FUTA now. So I had so offered me to go to FUTA to go and study engineering, and I was so annoyed because as at that point we considered FUTA as a second generation university, a second class university. I was in Ilorin, which I felt was a first class university, and I felt it was a downgrade. We used to look down on some of our colleagues that went to FUTA. So for me to be seen going to FUTA to me was a downgrade. That was my thinking then. So when I now eventually found myself in there, it was not just that. By the time I got into FUTA, I was a broken man because I had lost 4 years of my education, plus the 2 years that I had trying to get into the university. So 6 years. So my mates who went to study medicine were finishing medicine, and I was just going into the university. So I was totally devastated. I was a broken person. So when I got into FUTA, I just wanted to study, play volleyball, and go home. I did. Those were my two things: play volleyball, go to lecture, sleep. I didn't want to relate with nobody. I just wanted to go through the university, have my degree, and leave. But in the midst of that, I found faith. I began to explore my faith because I needed a succor. Because prior to that, I began to think of actually committing suicide after the Ilorin debacle. That was the point in life. But when I came in there, and I felt, let me explore faith. So I began to go to the Catholic Church. And in the midst of that Catholic Church, I met these charismatic guys who were on my case. Cut long story short, that became a journey for me. Through encountering them, I began to know a bit more about God. I thought I knew Him. Although in my secondary school, I had actually been born again at backsliding, but this now awakened something in me that there was something much more than just attending church. And that began a journey. And that journey has taken me to where I am today because it triggered something in me that my life was not just about coming to this university. There was something more about my life, and that began the process. So in the midst of that, I got in the midst of trying to find something to do to just to numb myself from the pain, because when I got to FUTA, I was meeting some kids that were in primary school when I was already in the university. We were now mates. So to just try and cover, so I got into politics. In terms of getting into politics, I began to look for things to do. So I became the judge of the Judicial Council. The next year, I became the chief judge of the Judicial Council, and I was looking to become the president of the student union. So I decided I was going to travel out to go and get money to contest for that election. And when I was planning to travel, my dad, who had done everything possible to make sure I don't come back to the UK, he refused to give us he refused to allow us get a British passport. He made sure we got a Nigerian passport, so we had no reason to go back to England. So when I told him I was traveling, he said no way, because I finished second year in Ilorin. I had a challenge. I was finishing second year in FUTA. I said I was traveling to the UK. He said, listen, is there a problem with you and second year? You finish second year, you're traveling again. What if you go to the UK and you can't come back? What if you fall sick? What if you don't make the money you think? I said, I'm going. He said, I shouldn't go. So I made up my mind I was going to travel. And I tricked all of them and I left and I traveled to the UK. And but before I was leaving, somebody had actually asked me in the church I was attending that, oh, are you going to be the president of the Catholic students? I said, president of what? So I said, no, 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 no. These people are not serious. I want to be the president of the student union of this university. And in reality, if I had contested, the not winning will have been almost impossible, because the backing I had would have made me become the president, except something goes wrong somewhere. So so I went to England, and when I got to England, things did not go right. So uh, eventually, I think on the streets of London one day, when for almost 6 weeks I couldn't get a job. School had resumed, and I was still in London. I couldn't come back. My daddy's prophecy was was almost going to be fulfilled. That I told you not to go, and now I'm in London. I can't go back, and I'm stuck here. So on the streets of London, one day, with tears in my eyes, I looked up to heaven and I said, God, if you can help me, I will serve you. And that day, no job came. So I went home and I slept. Slept from 8 p.m. till 8 a.m. The next morning, I woke up not knowing that night, God answered that prayer. I got a job. They had been looking for me to come and resume. So when I woke up in the morning, I saw a note by my uncle. You are to resume at 9 o'clock in Chancery Lane. And I stay in Forest Gate. I looked, how am I going to get from Forest Gate to Chancery Lane? I woke up, I think, about 10 past 8 or something like that. Even if I took a cab, I don't think I would get to Chancery Lane. But I made it there. I was late. By the time I got there, they had tricked me. Somebody had taken the job. They now say I should go and do 2 hours. I said, no, I'm not doing 2 hours. I'm given a full-time employment. Cut long story short, I got that job. And God was able to help me. In 8 weeks, I was able to raise the money for my ticket, raise the money for the money I borrowed to come to the UK, because my dad didn't give me the money. So my friend had to give me the money. So I came in, and after I got on the plane and I was going back, I opened my Bible and I saw a scripture that does not exist in that Bible. It said, now that you are finished, go and lead my people. I closed the Bible. I said, hold on. I opened it again to another. I just opened it randomly. I saw the same thing, and I didn't open that Bible again till I got to Nigeria. When I eventually got to Nigeria, the student union election had taken place. There was only one election they were waiting for. They were holding that election. Normally, they will hold the election in October or November. I came back to school in January. They were still waiting. The only election left was the president of the Federation of Catholic Students. So they asked me, do you want to contest? I already knew the answer. So I said yes. They said they still, when I put in my nomination, nobody else was contesting against me. That was strange. So they say, okay, even though there's nobody, we still need to be sure that the Catholic students want you as president. So we went to an election. I had 100% vote. So I knew at that point that there was something God was about to do. And that began my journey. And that eventually led to me. At that point, I was still in and out. But on the 18th of April 1991, I made a commitment to surrender my life fully to Jesus and to do whatever he wants me to do with my life, with the life he has given me. And that began a process of discipleship, mentoring, finding out what exactly is my life about. What is it that he has called me to do? And that eventually led me to deciding to come to the UK in 1993 to come and start the work that God had been giving us in the ministry we were attending then, with regards to preparing men for the great harvest in the Catholic Church. So I traveled in 93, and that passion was there. I went back to finish my education with a goal that I was coming back to the UK. And that has been the journey. So I think I've gone quite deep, but that was what led me to not, so all the while studying industrial maths, my goal was not to work with the industrial maths degree. My goal was to go into, even though we didn't know anything about this full-time ministry or not, I was just passionate that whatever I'm doing, even if I get a job, it is about doing the business of the kingdom. And at that point we didn't know what it meant to be ordained as a pastor. We were not even pastors, we were just brothers. So anywhere we get to, we do the work of God, and we enjoy it. And that eventually led to one or two things which we will discuss um, later. Yeah.
Wonderful. Um, so kind of shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
You are a married man,
Yeah.
so it'd be interesting for our viewers to kind of learn a bit about what marriage means to you. So how would you answer that? What does marriage mean to you?
Yeah, I think for me, if you look at what I said, going to FUTA was a divine appointment for me, because if I didn't go to FUTA, I would not have met the woman that God, aligned me with to become my wife, to become the help that I need, to become the person that God will help me to support to fulfill her own ministry. If I didn't go there, I would have missed that. But going there ordered my steps into that. And I see marriage as not just people procreating children. I see it as ministry. It is God bringing two people together to do much more than one person can do. One will chase 1,000, two chase 10,000. I see that as not just a literal thing. I see it as a divine concept. And that is the way I see marriage. I see marriage, and that's why when God told me this is the woman I'm going to marry, I began to ask God questions on what is this person coming to do. And God began to give me specifics. Some of the things that I did not even know she could do. She didn't even know she had the talent to do it. In FUTA, she was not in the choir. God told me she was going to be a worship leader. I didn't know. She didn't know until it was deep into our courtship that I began to see that even she saw herself. Before she knew what was happening, she was singing at the national convention in the whole of Nigeria. That was not something I saw before. She never was in the choir. I was not in the choir. She was not in the choir. We didn't know, but God told me there's a grace upon her that will help in this work. And that grace, I've seen it not just in work and in what God has done in raising our sons in the music line. We can see that it is that grace. So God gave us insight. So marriage is critical in purpose. It's critical in our agenda. I see marriage as the bridge between your inward ministry and your outward ministry. That's why it is crucial that a man ensures that you choose the right person, or you allow God open your eye to the one he has placed on that bridge to support you to be able to do your ministry outside. And that's the beauty of what I've seen. So, and when God told us, we didn't plan, we didn't know we were going to have children. We just knew that we loved one another, we were friends, and also that there was something He has called us to do, and that was our priority. That was our priority. That was what we were looking at, to ensure that we did not fail God. We didn't want to fail God. We were bent on ensuring that all that God had called us to do, we did it fully. We did it fully. We did it fully. Hallelujah. So and marriage for me is critical. A lot of people take it, they don't take it serious. They just think, it's about, oh, you don't want to commit immorality, so that's why you need to marry. No. There are so many people who are married who are living in deep level of, who are living a life of immorality to the tilt. But when you understand that it's beyond immorality, it is about purpose. You take it serious. You handle it with all seriousness, because you know that it can make and it can mar you. Amen. Yeah.
Great. Um, be interesting to hear a bit about the projects that you're currently working on. So could you give us a bit of insight into that?
Yeah. At the moment, there are a couple of things that I'm doing at the moment. I'm a pastor. That's one of the things. And when I mean as a pastor, I'm a missionary. I see myself as a missionary. I think that's the critical part of my role. I'm a missionary, and my role as a missionary is, it means I move from one location to the other. I'm not somebody that sits in a place. Oh, oh, I have to be in one branch or something. No, no, no. My job is the way I see the role that God has called me into is beyond just sitting in a place. It is to facilitate. That's why the call of God upon my life is as an apostle is not about a title. It's about an assignment to ensure that wherever people are, to support them, to help them to be able to fulfill the role that God has called them to make sure people are enabled to do what they are called. So at the moment, we're working on as myself and my wife, we're supporting the work in Sheffield, to ensure that the brethren in Sheffield, that the church there stands. We're looking at Sunderland, we're looking at Birmingham. Those are our current projects. Those are the places we are looking at. And beyond that, we're also looking outside the UK. We're looking at Spain. That is one of the areas that we were working on before the pandemic hit, and lockdown could not make us travel. So we're looking at Spain as well as Romania. So those are some areas where we're looking at, and also in this area where we are in Aylesbury, we have a center that we are kickstarting fully because of the project. Because of the project we were running in Sheffield, we've dedicated quite a lot of time to that. So we had to slow down what we were doing here in Aylesbury because most weekends we were having to travel to Sheffield. But now that that assignment has gotten to a point where we know they can stand, and that God has really given us some people that we can now focus on the work here and then begin to prepare for the work in Sunderland as well as in Birmingham. So those are the two areas. And I think the other one is a project that we had, the Potter's House, which was in London. We're looking at the moment to reestablish that fully, in the sorry, in the London area, the lower part of the London area. So that's the. So apart from that, we're also looking at youth empowerment. So that's one of the areas we are working on as well. Here to have a CIC that deals with youth in this area, to support them, to encourage them, to create a safe space for young people to be able to come in and learn and be mentored to fulfill the purpose of God for their life, to keep them away from crime, keep them away from delinquent issues of life. So that's one of the areas we are looking at the moment. Yeah.
Great, great. It sounds like you're quite busy, so
Yeah.
yeah, looking forward to seeing how all of that progresses. I'm looking up some of your books here.
Yeah.
So you are a writer. Could you just tell us a bit about your books and your writing?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is why marriage. When I say marriage is crucial, and I say marriage can make and they can mar somebody. It's when I think this is one of the areas that I've discovered. I didn't know I could write a book. It's not something that I thought I had the skill to do. But I think when we were on our honeymoon, we began to study the scripture, and we started to study the book of Genesis, myself and my wife. And we got to Genesis chapter 12. And as we got to Genesis chapter 12, I began to share some things. And as I shared, he said, that thing you are sharing, why don't you write it down? And I laughed. I wrote it down. I said, okay, what you are sharing, you add to it as well. So we sat down together and we wrote those things. And from there, I discovered that I was seeing some things much more. So I developed it. And that became my first book, titled Lot, the story of a man that missed it. Making the full title is Making Your Calling and Election Sure, an exposition on Lot, a man that missed it. It's available on Amazon if you want to, or maybe if you go to my Facebook page, you will see the links to my books. But that was my first book, and from that point, I discovered that wow, so I can write, because when people read it, people are saying wow, this is good, something like that. So I said wow, so I can write, because I saw some things that were not the things that I believe that I've read anywhere else before. So, and that kickstarted it. And from there, in 2003, we were at the point of transitioning into something different at that point. That was when we were looking to start the church, Potter's House in London, and we were moving from where we were living in Basildon, coming back to London. And as we were praying in December 2003, the Lord gave us a word. He gave me a word. He said, "Go into Adulam." I said, "Adulam, what does that mean?" So I began to investigate. I had a concordance. I began to search, and in the course of searching for that, began to see some things about David that I had never seen before. Because I'd read about David, I'd read that this is who David is. He's a small boy. But what I was getting from my study was giving me something a bit different. So I said, if I'm getting something different, let me put these things that I'm seeing, let me put it to pen. So I began to write that, and that's what led to my second book titled David Steps to the Throne. So that became my second book. After that, I think my third book was on the Daughters of Zion. It was an article I wrote in one of the schools where I was. I wrote that article and I sent it out to the staff in the school, and someone said, "Wow, this is great. This is serious," something like that. So he said, "Why don't you make it into a book?" So that became my third book. So that one focuses on young ladies, how they can stay on track and not allow anybody derail them, especially in the area of marriage. So Daughters of Zion. So that's also it's called Royal Daughters. So that was my third book, Royal Daughters, and my fourth book is called uh, uh, The Silent Chapters. Yeah, and what was I looking at? I was studying characters in the Bible, and the Lord began to open my eyes that, you see, the thing that will send a lot of people to hell are not the open chapters; they are the hidden chapters, the silent chapters that nobody knows. People might know you. Oh yeah, you're a big man of God. Oh, you're a good brother. You are a good this and that. That's what we see. But what does heaven see? What is the record of heaven? So I began to look at it. I began to study this story of Samson. I discovered that Samson had silent chapter that nobody knew. And the day he fell, people say, "Oh, it was Delilah." No, he fell a long time before Delilah. I began to study the story of Gehazi, and I saw that what caused this man to fall, and that led to my fourth book. And my final book, well, my current book, doesn't say final, because I believe there are still more that we are writing at the moment. We are writing a book called Escaped, but this one is called Hail Mary, and it's a book that I that came out of a response to a challenge that I went through, and I discovered that so many of my Catholic friends or Catholic families and people were going through in terms of praying a kind of prayer that we used to pray when we were young, called the Hail Mary. And I was looking at the scriptures to see what exactly is this prayer about. Does it line up with the word of God? Let me explore it. So I took that prayer line by line and I checked the scriptures. And that's what, so it came out as a textbook when I was writing it. And when I printed it, I'm still going to try and see how I can make it into a smaller version, but that's what it came out as. And all these books, you can get them on my page. You can get them from Amazon, but beyond that, you can also get them from my page. But I use it more in evangelism, trying to give it to people so that people can read and know the truth. Praise them. So that's just so that's how I became a writer. Yeah.
Great. Um, Again, shifting gears a little bit, well, maybe a bit closely related. Aside from the writing, you're also a teacher.
Yeah.
So, could you tell us a bit about how that came about? How did you become a teacher?
Okay, yeah, becoming a teacher is not something that I planned. I didn't study education in the university. But you see, I've learned that there is all things work together for good for those that love God and are called according to His purpose. I didn't plan to be a teacher. I came into the UK. Actually, when I came into the country, I think in '97 thereabout, somebody muted the idea that teaching. I laughed. I said, teaching of all jobs, teaching, because our concept of teaching from Nigeria is that they are the people whose life, who will work and work and work and they don't get anything. And that's the reality in Nigeria. They do so much, they raise everybody, but their salary is horrible. The remuneration that they give to them is ridiculous. And they say the reward, they used to say in those days that the reward of teachers is in heaven. And after a while, teachers rebel. They know want to get the reward here on earth before we go to heaven. So I didn't plan that. I was working as an electrical test engineer, and I went to I used to do what they call pack testing, and I went to a hospital to go and test. And when I got to the hospital, this lady refused to shut down her computer so that I could test it. Now, I had the option of just putting a sticker on it and saying I tested it, or I could just say I did a virtual test. But I said, no, I'm in charge of safety in this university, in this hospital. I need to ensure that I test this computer, because if I put a sticker on it and that hospital burns down because of that computer, which could happen, I will be held liable, because I will have said it was safe, and my job was safety. So I refused. So I tested the whole hospital. This hospital was in Wembley, London, and every time I meet her, I will tell the lady, I say, please, I'm going to come be shut. I'm going to test your computer. When should I come? You say, oh, I'm going for break at 1 o'clock. I will shut it down. When I get there, she will have locked her computer. Now, the system then was not like it is now. If somebody is working on their computer and they shut it down without logging out and saving their file, they lose what they were doing. So it's not like now where it does the automatic update. So I couldn't risk pulling the plug, because I knew she had files behind that locked screen. So I will get back there and she will have logged the thing. So one day I now stood behind her. I said, today, I tested almost the whole, it was her computer that was left. So I said, I'm going to wait behind her today. I said, when are you going for break? She told me. I said, I'll wait. So while she was watching, while she was doing what she was doing, I saw that she was doing some things on statistics on the screen. So I looked at her. I said, oh, this is statistics. She said, yes. I said, I did it as part of my degree. She turned back and said, you have a degree? I said, yes. Because I discovered that she was being condescending to me. That's why she was doing what she was doing. I felt a bit of racism in what she was doing. So so I laughed. So I said, yes, I have a degree in industrial math. He said, what? In industrial math? He said, my son has given up on maths. I said, I'll come and help your son. She said, what? He said, how much do you collect? I said, I won't collect anything. She thought I was joking. So I went to her house. She was a single mother with I think she had 2 sons or something like that, or a son and a daughter. So I went to the place and I began to help that boy. And then I would teach the boy. He will understand. I would teach him the Nigerian method I know. When he gets to school, the teacher will say, I don't understand how you got your answer. I know you are getting it, but it's not the way I taught you. So I now say, show me what your teacher is showing you. And I will teach you my method and then teach you using your teacher's method. So and that's how I discovered that, hold on, what they were teaching them in school, I can do this I can teach. So I found out, how do you even get into teaching? So I went to Google it, and I found out, hold on, I'm going to get paid to go and train. They are going to pay my fee to train, and then they will give me a bursary to train. And they are going to give me £5,000 as a maths teacher when I qualify. I say, what have I been doing since all these years? Am I okay? So that's how I went to enroll for the PGC in education. Actually, Middlesex University forgot to invite us for an interview until I called them. They now say, oh, sorry, we forgot. And that's how I went for PGC. And that's how I became a maths teacher. So that seeming incident led me in the line. And I now discovered that, wow, I can actually teach. I didn't know I had the skill. But when I got in there, I discovered that teaching was almost like what I was cut out to do, because I had been mentoring young people and now discovered that I can use maths to mentor people. And that became a career for me. And that's how I've been this uh, in this career. And that's how I became a teacher. Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's interesting to see how kind of smaller things, seemingly insignificant things, can end up leading to.
I don't know if people have questions you can ask. They can
Some
pop in questions.
Yeah, some bigger moments. But yeah, if anybody does have any questions as we're talking, then feel free to send them in the chat, and we'll get round to them towards the end. But you've told us a lot about what you're currently doing. You told us a bit about your past, but it'd be interesting to look ahead and ask what's next for you.
Yeah, I think in terms of what's next, I'm seriously looking into doing more mentoring of young people. That's the area of my serious passion, and that's one of the things that led to me. I was in full-time teaching until last year, when I decided that I would rather go into something a bit more flexible. so that I have more time to be able to deal with the aspect of volunteering, some areas where I volunteer, where I'm able to reach out to young people, where I'm able to organize, where I'm able to support my community much more. So I'm much more now into community engagement. So that's the serious area. So community engagement, where the activities I'm going to have, we're looking to have a Christian library where young people can come in and sit down and read Christian literature, listen to Christian music, watch Christian movies. We're going to be able to have a safe space where people can come in and then they can have mentors, people who can support them, people who are going through one challenge. We're going to have it so that the kind of system we're looking at is a place where even parents, we can be at a creche where people can drop their kids for 1 hour. I don't know if you'll actually remember when you guys were young, we used to go to what do you call it, IKEA, and will drop you in the play area and go in and go and shop. Something of that form where people can bring their kids and they will drop their kids and then they can have a relief for 1 hour and they come back and we will have pampered their children, help them, and much more introduce them to the gospel in a way that the kids will go home, will give them something. It might be a book, it might be a DVD, it might be a video that they go back home and we transport that life into their home. So those are the kind of things we're looking to be able to do. So that's the future. That's what we're looking at. And supporting the work in various parts of Europe, because our assignment is actually not just UK. What God called us to do is to move, is to extend the frontiers of the gospel into Europe, and that's our focus. So UK, we've concentrated so much over the last 26 years in UK. We are now moving beyond UK. We're moving into Europe. So we'll be doing quite a lot in Europe over these next few years as the Lord gives us life, and the Lord gives us opportunities. So we're going to be focusing quite a lot on Europe. As God opens doors, we will go in there. And what we're doing here in terms of young people, we're going to be doing it in those places as well, because we know that those are the areas that every community needs to support the young people, the next generation. Yeah.
Wonderful. Great. So I think we are quickly coming to the end of our time. Um, but maybe as a kind of final thing, what do you have to say to your viewers?
Yeah, thank you very much, Olaji. I think one of the key things I just want to say to people is life can throw different things at you. What I've learned is that don't let those things drag you down. Don't. Every challenge that comes across your path has in it an opportunity. Don't let those challenges define you. Find the opportunity in those challenges and ride on those opportunities. I've spoken to you about the challenges I went through. The day I got my first degree, I knew that there was no limit because everything worked against me. There were points in the while I was studying that degree, especially in my third year, I would go and read for the whole night. I will wake up, I will finish reading the whole night, and I will be going to my room, and I will not remember anything. My head will go blank. But I was determined that, listen, I'm going to get this degree, whatever the cost. Nothing is going to stop me. I kept pressing. I kept pushing. I will tell my my mentor there, Pastor Wale Adelapo. I'll tell him, I say, I don't know what is going on. I have read. I'm not lazy. I didn't just wait till the exam. I'd studied these things before, but I'm going for an exam at 9 a.m. this morning, and I've read all night, and I can't remember anything. And I will go into the exam hall, and I will do what I can. And God favored me, and I will come out, and I was passing. It was not that I didn't get the grades I wanted, but God ensured that I got to the finishing line. So don't let those challenges stop you. Don't let whatever people throw at you. People might not like you. People might say bad things about you. You might have been abused. You might have been knocked down several times. Keep standing up, because in those challenges are opportunities. In those challenges is a way out. In those challenges, people are going to come and drink from the well of those challenges that you are going through. If only you can hold on. If only you can trust God. If only you can depend on God. You see, my story would not have been like this if I didn't allow God hold my hand and lead me. It was not an easy journey, but I want to thank God for the way He helped me, especially also with the wife He gave me. You know, 26 years in this country is not a joke. But you see, I was sharing yesterday with my father in the Lord, Pastor Wale Adilako. I told him, I said, do you know that this morning, today, makes it 26 years that I arrived in this country? 26 years. 26. I came in on the 25th. Myself and my wife, I was going to leave Nigeria. And to show my commitment to this woman, I told the father, I said, sir, our wedding is going to be when I come back. But to make sure there's no and there's nothing so that your heart is at rest, because people go to the UK and they find one girl in the UK. And I said, no, listen, let's do this thing this way. I want to make a commitment to show that, listen, I am not somebody that we have done our introduction in December. I said, listen, let's do it this way. So this is my commitment to this woman. And when we had that discussion and we did what we wanted to do, I left, and God preserved us. No, so she has been a source of strength to me. You must ensure that you marry the right woman, and marry the right man. Marry your friend. Don't just marry for the sake of marrying. Marry. Don't marry under pressure. Oh, because your age is coming. No, 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 no. Marry for purpose. I learned that. A lot of people miss it at that point. And once you miss it in the area of marriage, beloved, you are chasing shadows. It's going to be a serious problem. So please, I want to encourage you. Challenges are not going to define you. The challenges are not the end point. They are just the starting point of your glorious journey. Use those things. Ride on the wave of those challenges and move on to glorious things. Thank you. Yeah.
Great, lovely. Um, so I think that brings us to the end of our time. So we want to say thank you to you, the viewers, for watching, and we look forward to seeing you on the next edition of One to One with Kolade Akin, where we'll have another guest.
Thank you very much. And yeah, thank you. Please share this with people that you know. And it's been nice having you. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and God bless you.